Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a quick recap of the season finale of Striking Out, Season 2, Episode 6. Okay, so Tara and Sam are really trying to figure out what they actually are. Are they a couple? Are they not a couple? It's still up in the air. You know, it's because it's still secretive. Nobody knows about their relationship at this point. And Sam wanted to be real. He doesn't want to feel like he's being kept a secret. And of course, given the situation that Tara is in, it's a little more difficult for her because when it's all boiled down to it, Sarah is sleeping with her ex-fiance's brother, and Sam is sleeping with his brother's ex-fiance. It's a delicate situation, but he basically tells her that he's thinking about moving back permanently and shows her this place that he's thinking about buying, which is a gorgeous place that's overlooking the water, very romantic in the whole situation. And in the end, he eventually asks her to go away with him, and she agreed. So if you remember in the last episode, Eric, things are still unfolding about what's going on between his father's involvement in these three men dealing with the misappropriation of funds, the $18 million of taxpayers' money. And so he got back to the office in the last episode and asked Lucy to do research on the visitor's log. So Eric arrives at work today and he realizes that Lucy's not there anymore. She's been replaced. He's trying to, figure out what's going on. So he actually goes to her apartment and realizes that she's actually moved out. So Lucy at this point is nowhere to be found, and he has no idea what's going on, what's what. So he receives a call from Tara about his father, and Eric tells her that Lucy's gone. And he told Tara that about the visitor's log. He asked her to look into something for him, and then now all of a sudden she's gone. So of course Tara is like, what do you say? They're both kind of feeling like, what the hell is going on? And so Eric is back at the office, and he actually receives a call from Lucy, and she tells him that, that it's this job that she applied for some time ago that she got, and, everything happened so quickly, and I think she's actually in New York, if I'm not mistaken now. And I was like, girl, you jumped on a plane and packed your apartment up and just that quick. And so, of course, he's sitting there like, okay, well, what about us? And if you remember the last conversation they had when he apologized for the whole thing that happened between him, the whole argument, I guess they had in the restaurant. And she was basically like, we're just having fun. There's nothing serious. Basically, I ain't sweating it. And so she basically told him, well, it wasn't that serious, and we were just having fun, and, you could come to visit. And he's just like, his face, because I guess he was starting to have feelings for her. But Lucy seems like they never talk about her age, but she seemed like she's fairly young, and she really wasn't trying to have no kind of relationship. Not really, anyway. And she was honest about it, so it wasn't like she led him on or anything like that. So after that conversation, he noticed that Sam is set up in an office, and so he walks in, like, well, what's going on? And Sam's like, oh yeah, well, I'm back here now, I work here now. That was his office. And so he had to go out. Sam had to leave to go meet with a client. I guess I'm thinking a potential client. And Eric is still in the office, and he sees this notepad with a number and name on it. And so he's really trying to figure out, okay, now Lucy's gone. This whole thing was his father. Now you're back here working. What's going on? And he sees this name on the pad. He actually took the pad. So he goes back to the receptionist and asks the receptionist if she had the old visitor's log, and she said, well, no, they're gone. So now all of a sudden these visitors logs have disappeared. And he ended up asking for the conference room logs, and those she did have. So she gave those to him, and he went through, and he saw that York had been there to see his father. Now, again, York, their firm represents the Minister of Health, which is McGrath, and Fitzpatrick, I believe, which is the contractor whose bid was accepted for the hospital. So York, who was head of acquisitions, I believe. Okay, he's now starting to put two and two together. Richard meeting with York was a conflict of interest because he was actually representing the other two people, so he had no business having a conversation with York on the side. But at the time, York didn't know, because they're finding out that York didn't know that the other two individuals were clients of Dunbar. So basically, after seeing that, Eric goes into his father's office and confronts him, basically saying he knows about the meeting with York while he was representing McGrath and Fitzpatrick. And basically, Richard is a piece of shit. He basically said that, well, okay, and what? You know, there's nothing you can do without violating attorney-client privilege, because he would have to, basically, in order to bring his father down in this situation, he would actually have to basically risk his license by divulging other things that are put into that's supposed to be confidential between him and his client. And his father knows that, and basically said that he also know about him and Tara's meetings and them trading information and all this other kind of stuff. So basically, Eric he's basically like, you're screwed. So get the hell out of my office. Ain't shit you could do. Just shut up and get out of my office. I don't want to hear anything else about it. That was basically Richard's conversation. So Eric meets up with Tara, and she starts to have a conversation with him about it. And he basically said that I can't talk to you about this anymore. And he doesn't go into any detail because Richard actually threatened to bring Tara down as well. And he still loves her. And he is basically trying to tell her without telling her, like, we can't really have any future conversations. And she's obviously like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand. And he's basically like, you know what? I can't talk to you anymore. If I was you, I would go and see if Miss York would talk to me about da-da-da-da. And so then he went on about his way. And she actually did go to Mrs. York's home. And she was basically asking her some questions about the meetings, like any records that she may have regarding York's business dealings or meetings that he may have had leading up to his death, and about his severance package and that kind of stuff. And so of course she was like, I have to talk to my attorney, about before I divulge that information. And she was basically understood, but she was also pressing her, saying that we're really trying to figure out what is going on here and we need your help. Eric is in his office. He's back in his office, and he still has this pad with his name on it, name and number on it. And the pad had a woman named Caroline something. I couldn't get her last name, Tacy or something like that. And so he called the number, and the lady was like, she basically identified himself as Mr. Dunbar. He didn't say which, he didn't give the first name, he said Mr. Dunbar. She was like, oh yeah, Lucy, we got Lucy moved in great, and everything is all good, da. So now he knows that the firm was behind this move and this new job opportunity and all this, and that's how basically they was able to get her up and out of there as quickly as they did. So he storms into the conference room where Sam was sitting working on something, and then Richard eventually walks in, and he basically confronts both of them. Sam didn't really say much of anything. Richard basically said, oh yeah, she, this opportunity came up and she jumped at it. And he was basically shady as shit, was like, well, I mean, there really was no reason for her to stay. So she didn't feel like there was anything keeping her here. Basically, like, whatever you thought you had with her wasn't shit, and she didn't really care about you. And the minute we offered her something better, which basically something better, she took it. So what does that say about how she really felt about you? Basically, that's basically what he was saying. So of course, like I said, Sam didn't say anything. He was basically helping his father put his coat on, because based on Vince, it's obviously still, the inquiry is still going on, and they were able to find out that the connection where some of the money went, and the connection between some of the people involved. That McGrath, after this whole deal went down, they noticed that McGrath added this huge extension onto his house. He only paid a fraction of the cost, the contracting cost. The rest of the remainder of the cost was paid by another organization that uses taxpayers' money, that is actually, in this organization is represented by the Dunbar. So there's basically all these people are kind of connected. So they made this connection, and they basically sent a request to Richard and McGrath that they're going to have to come back in and answer for what this money and their connection to each other through this organization, how this money's been moving. And so basically that's why he was helping him with his Sam was putting his father's coat on, help, because Sam is actually representing his father in the inquiry. And so they go on their way. So of course Eric is pissed. I'm probably skipping some stuff, but I'm jumping around some. So Eric is pissed off. So he goes to Tara, and basically he was willing to risk everything. He's like, I want to give evidence against my father. And Tara was like, well, are you sure about this? You know, you'll lose your license. I mean, there's all of these things that are going to happen if you violate attorney-client privilege and disclose this confidential information. And Tara still cares about him as well. So she basically said, you know what? You don't have to do that. We have more than enough evidence to connect him to what's been going on here. You don't have to do that. And so he kind of like, he's like, are you sure? And she said, yeah. She said, well, he basically said, I'll be on standby. Basically, if you need any information, just come to me, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that, you know, we're going to work together to bring his ass down, because this is what he's just done. Okay. So we're going to flash back a little bit. A few episodes ago, this was back when Ray decided to go back to school. Ray was contemplating going back to school. So he's going through this whole thing. Just, you could see that his mind is working. You see he's changing. He's trying to go in a different direction. And you could see kind of the distance between him and his boyfriend, Steve. And in the end, he ends up breaking up with Steve because Ray is at a different place in his life. And he really just wanted to start anew. And of course, Steve is hurt and upset and didn't want the relationship to end, but it was what it was. So in this episode, you see Steve, it doesn't say, they didn't really go into much detail, but Steve is in the police station, and the police is basically asking him questions about Ray. And he's, obviously still cares about Ray, so he's not giving them any information. I don't know what information they had on Steve, but you can kind of tell they're trying to get Steve to help set Ray up, get Ray all screwed up in the system again. And so it basically ends there. And so Steve actually shows up to the office where Vince works while they're preparing for the inquiry, and he wants to talk to Ray, and Ray comes out. He's like, yeah, what's going on? But there's so much going on, and Ray's phone is going off, and he's like, I really need to talk to you. So he was actually trying to give Ray a heads up about what was going on. But there was so much stuff, and Ray was so distracted, and the phone and all this stuff, he basically said, you know what, never mind. And he left. Now, that was a bitch move. He should have, given what was about to happen, he should have made it a point to get Ray's attention to let him know what was what, so they weren't blindsided. So, okay, and we're gonna move forward here. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. So eventually, the information that Tara said that when Tara said that she had more than enough information, Mrs. York eventually did come in to speak with them. She had her husband's laptop and a copy of his severance information, his finances. And she basically had record, because he kept a record of everything. He had actually met with Dunbar 3 times. Obviously, during this time, he was still representing these other people, and he never disclosed that he was representing these other people. So York was giving him information without knowing that he was representing these other people. And basically, he was using that information to, I guess, do what was best for his own client. So it was this whole conflict of interest. It was just shady and illegal what Richard was doing. So now move forward, the inquest. So it was this whole big thing, it's just news reporters. This is, of all the people that has been interviewed, I guess Dunbar, because it seems like Dunbar is this huge law firm that represents anybody who's anybody. And so to have Richard Dunbar called in to this inquest, it caused a media firestorm. So you got the news reporters there all over the place. So you see them coming in individually. You have Vince coming in, Tara coming in, Dunbar coming in. Those people coming individually. And of course the reporters are all bombarding them with questions, and they're basically like, we can't disclose anything, we can't discuss anything. So they get on by and they go in. So Vince is asking Richard his questions, and he's just saying smug self, like, it just, God, you just want somebody to punch him in his damn face. He makes you so, he makes you sick. He really does. His arrogance is just, okay. So Joe walks in with the doctor's note because they were supposed to meet with Richard and McGrath. McGrath all of a sudden has fallen ill and got a note from his doctor, so he's not going to be there. Okay, fine. They knew it was BS, but it was what it was. There wasn't a whole lot they can do about that. Vin starts in by asking him about the meeting with York. And Richard was adamant. He went on record as saying that, no, we only met one time. And he was like, are you sure that you want to stick with that answer? And he kind of sat there like, well, yeah. So I don't think that Sam was at all prepared for what was going on, because you could see in his face he was confused as some of the questions were being asked and going back and forth. Like a lot of stuff wasn't probably disclosed to him. He was, I don't think he was as prepared as he could have been. And so Richard was like, well, no, we only met once. And so they basically said that we have a record here that you guys met 3 times, and they basically told him, what was what. He also asked him about the contracting company. I think it was Sandprac. I think that's her name is Sandprac. That was the company that did this construction on McGrath's house. And he was like, well, he said, we represent so many people, it's hard for me to remember. Sandprac was the company that did the extension on McGrath's house. And we noticed that McGrath only paid a fraction of the cost, and the whole thing about where the rest of the money came from, and how this other organization was represented by Dunbar. And so basically he's made the connection between Dunbar and this money and these other people. And so of course they're sitting there like, okay, you can see that he had him on the ropes, right? And so Tara receives the footage. Okay, so George is still investigating the officer for George has asked Meg to investigate Wade, who was the officer who, I guess, hired the other officers to get jack Ray up and put him in jail the last time. So that's still going on. George is still trying to get Ray clear of these charges. And so what she found is that Meg found out that they had been meeting at some church. And so Meg went into that church, and she kind of put up video cameras so that she could see the comings and goings of these people. And so she was able to get footage of Wade meeting with McGrath and Dunbar. And so they can't say that, they didn't know each other. So she sent the footage to Tara, and Tara showed the footage to Vince, and he started asking him questions about that. And so basically you can see, okay, Richard is about to get his comeuppance. This shit is about to hit the fan, and just a moment you've been waiting for, right? Like he's really gonna get his, right? What eventually happens is all of a sudden, people started getting texts. Everybody's phone is going off, this buzzing, and all these notifications, and people are like, what the hell is going on? All this noise, and they're still trying to ask the questions. So they look at their phones, and people start laughing, and they're like, what in the hell is going on? Tara shows him what everybody's been looking at. This motherfucker has basically, with his connections, and Steve, what he was trying to tell Ray was that this article came out basically implicating Vince and some kind of relationship with Steve, and how they did cocaine and crack together, and they have photos of cocaine and photos. They don't have photos of Vince doing cocaine. They just have photos of Vince and Ray. It's like one of those tabloid kind of covers. Now all of a sudden he a crackhead or something. It was a whole fool. And so they're looking at. So of course you look at Richard, and he has the smug look on his face, like, okay, now what? So in the end, the inquiry was adjourned. So it's like, oh shit, you really thought so? Now this situation is going to be dragged into season 3. So okay. But you started seeing some revelations. What you get as the show ends. What wasn't shown on the video was that when Richard and McGrath arrived at the church, they actually walked into a back office, which of course she didn't know was there, so she didn't have any cameras. And so you go in, and who do you see in there? Conrad, Tara's father. And he is wrapped up in this mess some kind of way, and McGrath was like basically trying to explain to him, like, basically you shouldn't worry about it. It's gonna go away. It's not gonna be that big a deal. So I'm like, who is Conrad? Is he what's his name? Scarface or Don Corleone? Because McGrath wasn't that smug asshole that he was with Conrad. So who is Conrad in this whole situation? Okay. So we find out that Conrad's involved in this, and it leads you to believe that Tara and Eric's relationship seems to me at this point, it was like a acquisition. It was like a merging of businesses or something. It was like it was a business arrangement that Eric and Tara knew nothing about. So that's what I'm getting from why they were so angry that the relationship fell apart. One of the reasons that Dunbar was so upset that the relationship fell apart, it seemed like there was some kind of business arrangement or some business opportunity that was going to come his way by Tara and Eric marrying. I don't know. That may come out in the next season, but it doesn't seem like their coming together was by accident, So what you also find, so Conrad gets home and Irene basically kicks him out. She asks him for a divorce because the Judge Andrews was the woman. I don't know if I said this before, but Judge Andrews was the woman that he had left to be with Irene after Irene got pregnant. So, Tara, obviously at this point, Tara knows about the affair, and she basically told him, you could just tell her face that she was just disappointed. And he was trying to explain to her when she initially, he wanted to talk to, when he talked to her about it, and she just didn't want to hear any of it. She was like, what, all I see right now is a man who's hurting my mother. And, that's basically how they parted ways. That was the last really conversation they had. It was bad. It was sad to see. But basically, Irene wasn't stupid. She knew what was up. So she basically, when he came home, she said, I want you out of here. I'm going to go take care of whatever I need to go to. But basically, when I come home, I want your ass gone. I want every evidence that you ever lived here out of this house. And he was like, I want a divorce. And he's like, on what grounds? And she basically let him know, adultery. Like, there wasn't a whole lot he could say. You see, he was angry. But it's like, dude, come on now. So she left. And then what you saw was in the final scene, or I guess one of the final scenes, the scenes that matter, was after the inquiry, you saw people arriving at this house. What looks like a house. And so they go into the room and you see Conrad, you see Judge Andrews and some other people, and they're watching the news. They're watching Vince as he's leaving the inquiry and basically saying that we've basically got him off the board. So this was basically to get him out. What they think is to get him out of the way so they can continue on whatever they're continuing on, which of course we don't know yet, which we'll most likely find out in season 3. So yeah, a lot happened in this episode. A lot was revealed in this episode. And it's really going to be interesting to see what happens in season 3. But I can't wait to season 3. Oh my goodness. So much. So much. So I will talk to you guys later.